Hello, and welcome to the CurioClips channel. This is one of the craziest theories in paleontology. Around 20,000 years ago, most of the northern hemisphere froze over and humanity was forced to migrate south or die. But while the evidence for this mini ice age is strong, experts don't agree if it actually happened. Hi, it's me, and welcome to Paleologic. Today we are talking about the so-called Younger Dryas, an alleged intense cold period that may have caused the last mass extinction. As always, if you find this kind of content educational, please consider supporting us through our support page. So let's just dive right into this. During the Pleistocene epoch, which lasted from around 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, Earth experienced several ice ages periods where much of the planet was covered in thick sheets of ice and large parts of the world became inhospitable for humans. Now, these big global cooling events happened pretty regularly during the Pleistocene. There were even times when almost the entire planet was frozen over. These times are referred to as glacial periods. Between those glacial periods were warmer intervals called interglacial periods. And that's what we are currently in. Well, technically speaking, we are in an interglacial period called the Holocene. The last glacial period ended around 11,700 years ago. So if you were alive then, you would have been able to see glaciers if you lived in the northern hemisphere. But some scientists believe that there was one more intense period of global cooling shortly after the ice sheets started melting away. It was called the Younger Dryas after the glacier that formed in the North Sea called the Drang. This new ice sheet may have rapidly expanded around 12,900 years ago, coincident with the end of the last ice age, and lasted until around 11,700 years ago. But unlike the ice sheets of the last ice age, the Younger Dryas didn't cover huge parts of the northern hemisphere. Instead, it mostly affected North America and Europe. Still, it may have triggered massive environmental changes across the entire planet. The problem is that we can't fully agree if the Younger Dryas really happened. It all comes down to the interpretation of the geological record. You see, geologists study rocks, sediments, and fossils to reconstruct past environments. For example, by looking at pollen trapped in lake sediments, researchers can get an idea of which plants grew in a certain area at a certain time. In the case of the Younger Dryas, scientists used multiple proxies to reconstruct the environment. They examined sediments from the bottom of lakes and oceans, pollen trapped in tree trunks, plant remains in lake mud, and charcoal from forest fires. And they compared all of this data with the history of rising sea levels during the last deglaciation. What they found was a period of rapid cooling right at the beginning of the melt period. But not everyone agrees that this cooling event was significant enough to constitute a true ice age. Some experts argue that the Younger Dryas wasn't even a thing. In 2013, however, a group of researchers from the University of Maine published a paper arguing that the Younger Dryas was indeed a real ice age. They wrote that a sudden influx of meltwater into the North Atlantic Ocean initiated a massive restructuring of ocean currents. This led to a northward shift of the jet stream and triggered an ice age that reached as far south as central Mexico and the southern tip of South America. The team argued that this Younger Dryas ice age was responsible for the last mass extinction, killing off around 70% of large mammals in North America. Today, most experts agree that there was a pronounced cooling event around 13,000 years ago. However, they disagree whether this cooling period qualifies as an ice age. The Younger Dryas was likely part of a natural climate fluctuation known as the Atlantic to Pacific oscillation. During the deglaciation, heat from the melting ice sheets flowed into the Atlantic Ocean. This warmed the surface water and caused it to move northwards. This current then released its heat into the atmosphere and fell back down as rain and snow, which melted the ice in northern Europe and North America. At the same time, the heat transport to the Pacific Ocean slowed down, leading to the formation of a cold pool of water along the western coast of North America. The researchers proposed that this cold water then mixed with the warm water of the Gulf Stream, which led to a sudden burst of cloud formation and precipitation. This could have disrupted the normal weather pattern and resulted in colder temperatures in North America. Researchers now know that the oscillation still exists today, and it continues to influence weather patterns worldwide. However, there is no consensus whether it was a contributing factor to the Younger Dryas or whether it had any influence on the megafauna extinctions. The sudden cooling may have contributed to the rapid disappearance of Ice Age animals, but according to most researchers, it wasn't the main reason. Just a few years ago, a team of scientists showed that the megafauna extinctions started long before the Younger Dryas began. According to them, humans were the main driver of these extinctions, and the Younger Dryas only made things worse. And here's where the story gets kind of weird. See, this idea of humans driving megafauna to extinction has been around for decades. In fact, some people even say that humans are always to blame for extinctions whenever there is no volcanic eruptions or asteroids involved. That sounds correct, but it doesn't necessarily mean that humans are solely responsible. Most scientists believe that the late Pleistocene megafauna extinctions were driven by a combination of factors, including climate change and human activity. There is a lot of evidence that climate fluctuations played a role in the extinctions. As glaciers advanced and retreated, habitats changed dramatically, and many species were unable to adapt quickly enough. It's also possible that as the climate warmed, new diseases emerged that devastated megafauna populations. But humans were likely the nail in the coffin for many species. When humans migrated into new territories, they hunted the local megafauna for food, and their dogs helped them do it more efficiently. Domestic dogs first appeared in the archaeological record around 14,000 years ago, just a few thousand years before the onset of the Younger Dryas. Dogs are believed to be descendants of wolves, and it seems that humans domesticated them very early on. This would have given humans an advantage over other predators such as saber-tooth cats, because dogs could run faster and travel further without having to stop and hunt for more food. Because they could also communicate with humans, they could be trained to do certain tasks, and hunters could use them to herd their prey. In addition to being better hunters, humans also competed with megafauna for food. Humans migrated to new regions and hunted species to extinction before they even had a chance to migrate there themselves. A good example is the American lion, which went extinct in North America around 12,800 years ago. It's possible that it simply couldn't compete with humans for food, and that's why it went extinct. Even though the Younger Dryas might have played a role in the extinctions, it's unlikely that it was the sole cause of them. It's more probable that it overlapped with the final extinctions of the megafauna, like the woolly mammoths and giant ground sloths. So yeah, as you can see, there is still a lot of debate surrounding the Younger Dryas. Did it happen? Was it really as bad as some people say it was? And did it really cause the last mass extinction? I guess we will never know for sure. Personally, I think it's fascinating to think about how close we came to going extinct ourselves. New research suggests that only a few thousand people survived the Younger Dryas in southern Africa and only a few hundred in Australia. If either of these groups had been wiped out, our species would have gone extinct. So thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe. Leave a comment below with your ideas for topics that we should cover in the future. And as always, have a great day.